Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we cut through the noise, try and really understand what's happening. Today, we're digging into some really complex events using insights from, well, a pretty unique source, an audio transcript. It gives a perspective you probably haven't heard much elsewhere.
That's right.
Our focus is the recent Israeli attack on Iranian soil. This event, it carries huge implications, and it really challenges a lot of common assumptions.
And our mission today is to unpack what happened right after, the ripple effects for the regime in Iran, for its people, and maybe what comes next. And we're basing this purely on the insights from this specific audio source.
Okay, let's jump right in then. When that news broke, the Israeli attack, my first reaction was genuine surprise, shock even.
Hmm.
The geopolitical weight felt, well, immediate, huge. I wonder, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about it?
Well, what's really fascinating, this comes straight from the source, is how people inside Iran, those pushing for freedom, saw it. For them, this attack, it absolutely was not the solution.
Not the solution, why not?
Our source is very clear. From their viewpoint, external intervention, war. It's just not the answer. It can't bring the fundamental change they're fighting for.
That really goes against the grain, doesn't it? Especially when you consider what the regime itself was probably expecting.
Exactly. They thought, okay, external attack, people will rally. Like the Iran-Iraq War.
Yep.
National unity, right?
That's what they banked on, but what actually happened?
Well, the reality was very different. The political feeling in Iran now is just, it's profoundly changed. People in Iran see the regime, the Mullah Khomeini coming out of the Revolutionary Guard, they're the #1 enemy.
Above any foreign attacker.
Far above, after decades of oppression. I mean, it's hard to imagine a greater foe for them.
So how did that play out on the ground? You mentioned it was different.
Well, we see concrete examples. People were described as almost passive, not rallying. In fact, quite the opposite. Many tried to get out of big cities. Tehran apparently became pretty empty for a while.
Fleeing the cities.
Yes. It just underlines very clearly this wasn't their war. It was the regime's war, period.
So the world is watching, no rallies, no support. What did that signal?
Our source highlights this observation: no internal support anywhere, not even in the mosques, which, as the analysis notes, kind of disproved all the lies the regime tells about its popular backing.
That whole Ummat Islam, the Islamic nation narrative.
Exactly. The world saw it wasn't real. That support isn't there.
That's huge. And what about casualties? Regime figures.
Yeah.
How did people react? This is where it gets really intense based on the source.
Yeah, it's quite astonishing. The source describes widespread joy and celebration when news spread about the deaths of military commanders, even nuclear figures.
Joy and celebration, seriously.
Yes. Videos apparently circulated, messages from families of people the regime had harmed, expressing happiness, some even kind of darkly joking, giving addresses for where Israel should strike next. It just shows the sheer depth of that resentment.
Wow. That paints an incredible picture.
Okay.
So beyond the public mood, what about the strategy? Targeting military nuclear people. What was the impact there?
Right. So the regime's big plan, their nuclear strategy,
Yeah.
it was twofold. One, become an aggressive power in the region. Two, and this is crucial, get an impenetrable shield.
Yeah.
Something to stop them being overthrown.
A nuclear guarantee for survival?
Precisely. This is Rafsanjani's vision, apparently. Chased for 2 decades, costing, well, the estimate's staggering, over $2,000 billion.
2,000 billion out of the Iranian economy.
Drained from the people, yes.
Yeah.
But here's the absolute core insight from our source on this. That dream of atomic power bringing peace of mind, stopping regime change.
Yeah.
It's over. Forever. The source says the atomic sting of the mullahs has been pulled. That whole ambition, it's history now.
So if the nuclear path is gone, what's left? What's the way forward? The source mentions the Iranian resistance's idea, the third solution.
Yes, the third solution, it's been articulated for a while famously by Maryam Rajavi in the European Parliament.
Okay, so what is it exactly?
Well, it's called the third solution because it rejects the other two main options you hear about. Option 1, foreign military action, like these Israeli strikes. Option 2, appeasing the regime, trying to make deals.
So it rejects both war and appeasement.
Explicitly. Instead, it focuses entirely on the will of the Iranian people, their desire for freedom, for a democratic government, a peaceful one.
And the thinking is that path would end regional tension.
Undeniably, yes. Though the source Riley notes, it probably wouldn't do much for arms dealers in the Middle East.
Oh, fair point.
And look, after, 25, 26 years of trying the other two? Appeasement and war? They both clearly failed.
Right. Seems pretty evident.
So the source argues this third solution is really the only viable way out now, which leads you to ask, okay, if it's so clear, why isn't it happening? Why isn't it embraced?
That is the big question, isn't it? And part of the answer, according to the source, is about recognition, or the lack of it.
Exactly. The challenge the resistance faces is that Western governments just don't recognize their struggle as legitimate.
How so?
Well, historically, it was worse. In the past, something like 13 countries actually listed the main resistance group as terrorist. That severely hampered them. And even now, the source claims, Western media often labels resistance actions inside Iran's self-defense against the Revolutionary Guard as terrorist operations.
Which denies their right to fight back.
Effectively, yes. And recognition for them also means stopping the censorship.
Censorship?
Yeah, like huge gatherings of Iranian expats.
Yeah.
Maybe 1,500 in Berlin or over 100,000 in Paris. They happen, but they get almost zero coverage in major media.
While other, maybe safer topics get attention.
Exactly. Like a filmmaker might get coverage, but the core message of organized resistance gets suppressed. That's the claim.
Yet, despite all that, the lack of recognition, the risks, the source says these rebellious units are still active inside Iran.
Very active. Continuing their work, risking execution every single day. The source mentions an average of 5 to 6 operations daily. It's quite remarkable, really.
Okay, now, let's shift focus slightly. There's another figure who gets mentioned a lot, especially in Western media. Reza Pahlavi, promoting himself as an alternative.
Right, and our source offers a very critical take on him.
How so?
He's described basically as a servant and puppet of foreigners, tracing his family line back to rulers installed by the British, seen as completely out of touch. Believing the world works like it did 120 years ago, where foreign powers could just slot rulers into place.
Which doesn't really fly anymore.
The source points to the U.S. failure with Karzai in Afghanistan as proof that it doesn't work like that now. You can't just impose someone. And it misunderstands why Israel is acting now. Israel's bombing isn't about conquest or installing Pahlavi. It's about stopping a nuclear threat. That's the key difference.
So Pahlavi's reading of the situation is off.
Completely off, according to this analysis. The conclusion is quite stark. He's called a half-burnt pawn who is now completely burnt, unusable.
Unusable by whom?
Well, useful perhaps to Khamenei as a distraction from the real organized alternative, and maybe useful to some foreign powers who also didn't want the main resistance gaining traction. That's the implication.
It's fascinating. The source suggests the big worry for international players isn't how to get rid of Khamenei.
No, the real headache is the day after. What comes next?
And Pahlavi isn't seen as the answer to that.
Not at all. Dismissed as a mockery and a scarecrow. If he was the solution, the whole dynamic would be different.
Which brings us right to the core question, doesn't it? Is the overthrow of this regime actually, is it insight?
The source is absolutely unequivocal on this. The process of overthrow. It has begun. No doubt about it.
Begun.
Yes. The regime will never return to what it was before, not even what it was a week ago. Every day, it gets closer to overthrow.
But who does the overthrowing? The source seems clear on that, too.
Absolutely fundamental point.
Yeah.
It can only be overthrown by the Iranian people themselves. Foreign wars, big or small, they cannot overthrow this regime.
So external events like the Israeli strikes.
They act as serious catalysts. That's the term used. They accelerate the process, they intensify it, but they don't replace the core driver.
Which is the people.
Which is the people. The final step, the source insists, will be taken by the people in the streets.
And that moment is?
Very, very close.
Yeah.
That's the assessment. The next wave of protests will be stronger than ever, and crucially, the regime will be weaker than ever.
Okay, so let's try and recap the key takeaways from this deep dive. It's been a lot. We saw the surprising lack of public support for the regime when attacked externally. Really profound.
Yeah, and the shattering of that nuclear dream,
Right.
that decades-long ambition, just gone.
Then there's the resistance's third solution, consistently offered.
But facing huge challenges with recognition and media visibility in the West.
Right. And we looked at the fading relevance of figures like Pahlavi, these supposed alternatives.
Who are seen, ultimately, as distractions, not solutions.
And underpinning it all, the absolute certainty from this source that the Iranian people themselves hold the key, that the overthrow is underway and accelerating.
Exactly. The power lies within Iran.
So here's a final thought, something for you to mull over.
Given that the day after Khamenei is the main worry for global powers, and given this undeniable internal will for change we've discussed, how might those two realities the external concern and the internal drive actually converge, how might that shape Iran's path to freedom in ways we haven't even imagined yet?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration helps you keep thinking about these huge shifts happening in our world.
ببین خون خیابان را، ببین غوغای میدان را، زمین و آسمان یخزد، نمیبینی زمستان را، نمیبینی زمستان را. زجا برخیز، زجا برخیز، زمان آبستن توفان ویرانی. زجا برخیز که امیدم به آن فردای نورانی. زجا برخیز. دارد ز باغم کشته می سازد، چه توفانی ز کشته پشته می سازد. شب آمد شب همه در خواب طولانی، بیا با من، بیا با من، بیا با من به فردایی که میدانی. زجا برخیز، زجا برخیز. زجا برخیز، زجا برخیز، ز سمت روشنایی ها خبر آمد. زجا برخیز، نماند در خواب تاریکت سحر آمد. ببین خورشید تنها را که رویایی جوان دارد، زمان در حسرت روزی که حرفی ناگهان دارد. زمین دستان سردش را به سوی آسمان دارد، نگاهت ریشه خواهد زد، نگاهت ریشه خواهد زد که چشمان تو جان دارد. زجا